Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka Lord Spoilrial, and this video we're breaking down the latest entry of his Dark Materials and giving you some terrible puns to go along with it. Now I have taken a 2-week hiatus of posting this after the first episode breakdown, and that's purely because of the release schedule of the show. It actually drops 1 week in advance in England, but as with most of my subscribers being American, I thought I'd hold off just so you guys have had some time to watch it. And also because the first video did terrible view-wise. Anyway, episode 2 starts very strangely, and I was actually a bit disappointed that they completely dropped the cliffhanger from last time. If you cast your mind back, you'll remember that we ended the prior entry with Will being stalked by a spectre, and just as it was about to attack, the episode cut to black. That plot point doesn't appear again, and the episode picks up the next morning with everything all fine and dandy. Pan is in the form of a red panda, and I kinda hope that he takes on this shape more often, as he's called Pan, and he's, well, a panda. No, never mind. Anyway, he's not the only one who's transformed either, and Lyra is trying on different clothes in order to blend in. This entry centers around Lyra and Pan going to Will's Oxford for the first time, and almost immediately upon entering it, trouble starts to find them. After Lyra is knocked down by a car, we see as Lord Spoilrial watches them, and slowly he puts into place his plans to get the Golden Compass. One of the strange things about the episode is that Boreal and Lyra actually come face to face at one point, and she doesn't recognize him at all. You may remember that he was at Mrs. Coulter's party in the first season, but for some reason she doesn't quite remember who he is, which allows him to sink his claws into her slightly. Now Boreal is actually a play on the word Aurora Borealis, which the story of course centers around. In addition to this, in the source material, Boreal goes by the name Sir Charles Latram. Latram backwards is mortal, so you very much get this aesthetic of his pseudonyms being a play on words. Boreal has been tasked with tracking down John Parry, who, as we know, is going to be played by Andrew Scott. Now they have changed his character slightly for the series, as in the book, Boreal was an old man who used his kindly and gentle appearance to manipulate Lyra in several ways. Other than the cars, there are also a lot of similarities of Oxford to Lyra's. However, one big omission is Jordan's college, which is currently just a construction site in Will's reality. Lyra is pretty disappointed by this, but I do love that she bumps into several people and has to dash out of the way of bikes. In her world, airships and boats are sort of the main methods of transportation, and though there are cars, they aren't used as regularly. It is a nice little detail that shows the creative team were paying attention to how the little aspects would change, and I really appreciated it just seeing Lyra fall over all the time. Anyway, they compare Will's phone to the compass, and after he receives a lot of notifications from his mum, the pair split up. They agree to meet at the Botanical Gardens, which is a location that exists in both Will and Lyra's Oxford. Elsewhere, the Magisterium are mourning the death of their Cardinal, and the Senate from Star Wars has assembled to decide what to do next. Father MacPhail has now taken over the reins of the group, and this is of course a power play by Mrs. Coulter in order to gain control over them. Lyra heads into a museum, and it's at this point that she asks for help finding a scholar that will tell her about dust. Not only does the compass tell her to look for the door with the mountain on it, it also tells her to look for the scholar and to help Will find his father. Now as we know, Will and Lyra's fate are very heavily linked together, and both are pretty much the opposites of one another in their respective worlds. Opposites, same characters, you know what I mean. Anyway, the point is that Boreal here makes his play, but rather than attacking Lyra and taking the compass for himself, he decides to do a different strategy. This involves gaining her trust in the hopes that she will drop her god. Now I always thought that this moment held a lot of biblical similarities, and as we know, Boreal's demon is the snake. The snake was very prominent in the Garden of Eden, and even tempted Eve with the idea of knowledge. Lyra and Will could somewhat be viewed as almost Adam and Eve-like figures, and from their respective worlds, they've both sort of been abandoned by their fathers and cast into a paradise, which I think the island represents. Boreal is trying to gain knowledge as well as getting Eve, or rather Lyra, on his side, and thus he's doing the long game, which involves making her trust him. I don't know if I'm reading into that, but whenever I see a snake, an object that can grant knowledge along with a male and female character, I think it's done on purpose to reference the good book. Boreal lets her leave, and Will goes to his mother to let her know that he's okay. cut to the witches and we see Seraphina confronting Ruta over her attack last week. This ambush has really rocked the status of things, and it could easily send them into an all-out war that could completely ravage the planet. As we know, the Cardinal is dead, and Ruta wants to capitalize on this by uniting the 9 clans in order to take the Magisterium whilst they still can. However, Seraphina is sure that the prophecy which centers around Lyra is the right action to take, and she's worried that if they can't get to her in time, that all will be lost. Now, speaking of Lyra, she arrives at the Dark Matters research unit in the college to find Mary Malone birdwatching. Malone becomes an incredibly important character in the work, and after discussing dark matter and dust, Mary reveals some significant things. Namely that dark matter and dust have a conscience to them. Now, as we discussed in our last breakdown, different things in different realities have different words assigned to them. For example, demon in our world means something completely different in Lyra's, and we discover that both dark matter and dust are one and the same. Now, the Magisterium makes some bold moves, and at their headquarters we watch as Coulter and Boreal meet. It's a very tense conversation, with both subtly suggesting that they know secrets about the other. Boreal's is that he's been visiting another world, and Coulter's is that her daughter Lyra is missing. Boreal of course knows where she is, and Coulter is desperate to find this out. Now, before things really heat up, Dr. Martin is brought before the Magisterium, and though he's there to try and broker peace, MacPhail doesn't buy it. Ruta has really caused a lot of issues, and though this would normally lead to things settling down, it actually causes more problems. Martin is sentenced to 8 years hard labour, and we also get a hint at towards what could be going on with Coulter. This is because we learn of a region in the north in which demons cannot go. In order to become a witch, a girl must venture into there without her demon, and it allows for them to be separated from the soul without killing either. As we know from season 1, Coulter can separate from her demon, and I think the focus on her as this is being discussed is definitely meant to hint to us that she was part of a ritual. Now, elsewhere, we watch as Will learns through his father's will, pun intended, who his grandparents are. Crap pun though, wasn't it? But they're not like your grandparents or mine, where they just want to give you food and money all the time. They're actually a bunch of snitches, and thus he leaves to find Lyra. Now, Lyra and Malone really get into the lore of dust and how it can only be measured upon being viewed. However, this is difficult because the particles don't reflect light, and thus Mary has had to build a computer to help her examine the matter. This computer in many ways is very similar to the compass in that it can answer specific questions if one mind is put into a certain state when connected to it. With the compass, one must sort of exist in between states, whereas with the computer, you can actually just hook yourself up to it. Thus, Lyra journeys to the computer cave with Malone, and she's jacked into it. Is that the correct phrasing? I don't know, but it sounds cool. Anyway, what matters here is the multiple symbols from the compass that are brought to the machine. Now, shoutouts to Screen Rant for breaking these all down, and the first letters that we get are the Alpha and Omega symbols from the Greek alphabet. These are actually laid over the top of one another, and they carry a lot of meanings. According to Random House, who published the book, the Alpha and Omega mean finality and inevitability, which could hint towards the prophecy that involves Lyra. The symbols also appeared in the Book of Revelations as a title for God, so it's very much tied in with the ending of things and great power. Next is another symbol of power, which is the sun. On the compass, this means day, however, it also represents truth. It could hint that the truth will come to light down the line, and I swear that's not a pun. Next is the owl, which means the opposite to the sun, and rather than day, it means night. However, it also brings with it the idea of winter and fear, as well as a hunter. Lyra, of course, has Lord Boreal after her, and it could tease the trials that are coming to her down the line. Owls also typically represent wisdom, so this could tie in with Malone, who's going to be guiding the character. There's also the I Ching, or I Ching is it? Or anyway, it's the Book of Changes, which is a historical Chinese text that's used to grant wisdom. This book actually pops up later in the story after Malone manages to get it, and sorry if that's ruined everything for you, I hope not though. Now, the knife also appears, and this is the subtle knife, which is a big MacGuffin in the season. I got into trouble in the last video for spoiling what it does, so I won't do that here, but if you want to know, then definitely go check out the previous entry that we did. It was a brilliant breakdown, I must say myself. Lastly is the Hourglass, which no prizes for guessing, represents time, and the appearance of this reminds Lyra that she has to meet Will specifically at 5 PM and the two rendezvous at the gardens. Now the bench itself is a big Easter egg. I'm not going to ruin its significance just yet, but it's actually tied heavily into the storyline, and in real life there's actually a statue of demons placed beside it. Having the pair meet here is very important, and this fourth wall breaking moment I think will make a lot of fans of the source material very happy. Will and Lyra really share a touching moment at this point, and using the alethiometer she confirms that his mother is okay. It also tells the pair that they need to find Will's father. However, because of the betrayal carried out by his grandparents, Will doesn't know who to trust. Lyra of course relates to this after being betrayed by both her father and mother, and really start to see the character similarities line up. I think this bench will be back before you know it, and once lockdown ends in the UK, I'm gonna go there and get a selfie. Probably not though. Anyway, back at the Magisterium, Coulter convinces MacPhail to launch airships on the witches, which completely bombard them. This is obviously going to further the war between the two sides, and MacPhail sees it as a necessary sin. He actually punishes himself in private for it, and holds his hand over a candle which burns the flesh on it. Elsewhere, Coulter discovers from Thorold that Lyra has travelled to another world, and she'll obviously be heading to the Setagaze in order to try and track her down. You also see as the attack commences on the witches, and the Magisterium carry out their burning ritual whilst the landscape of the witches does too. This is a declaration of war, and I was shocked at how impactful this final scene was. Something about the intercutting of the witch's home burning whilst MacPhail stands in front of a flame was really emotional, I thought, and obviously going forward it's going to be all out war between the pair. MacPhail has finally gained the power he's long sought after, but Coulter states that it's actually a curse that he's been given and that he's merely a fly in her web. She divulges the multiverse and then says she's going on her mission to find Lyra. She calls MacPhail Hugh as a way to show that she doesn't respect him at all, and the episode ends with her leaving with one of the best struts I've ever seen. And that concludes the entry, and obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and what you want to see in the show going forward. Make sure you comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video then please drop a thumbs up and check out our recap of the first entry in case you missed it. Don't forget we're giving away 3 copies of the Marvel Phase 2 box set, and all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below. The winner is going to be chosen at random on the 30th of November, so make sure you get involved. If you want to support the channel and get to see content early, then please consider clicking the join button below. You can also come chat to us on the Discord server linked in the description, or Heavy Spoilers on Twitter. Thanks for making it until the end of the video. You've been the best. I've been Paul. I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.